So there's this guy, and this guy, he's not a bad person. Like, he's a decent man, he's a smart person, and he genuinely cares about people. And he became a king. He's loved by his people, and he genuinely cares about it. And then one day he finds out that he killed his father, married his mother, and had 4 kids with her. And the worst part, he did all this while actively preventing this from happening. This is the story of Oedipus. This was written 2500 years ago and is still the most unsettling things human has ever put on paper. This is not about some Greek gods or fate versus will. Although it is in there, Thebes, ancient Greece, is a city state, which basically means it's a city that thinks it's a whole country. And fair enough, cities have been doing that forever. The king of Thebes is a man named Laius, and his wife is Jocasta. And by all accounts, they've been running the city good. The city is okay. Look, it's Bronze Age Greece, and it's not great for anyone, but it could be worse. The one thing they don't have is a kid. So Laius does what people in ancient Greece did when they had a serious question about their lives. He goes to the oracle at Delphi. Now I need to explain what an oracle is because it sounds mystical. And it kind of is. But it's also very mundane in a way that I find it hilarious. The oracle at Delphi is basically a temple dedicated to the god of sun, prophecy, and music. Basically, the overachiever of the Greek pantheon. Inside this temple, there's a woman called Pythia. She sits over a crack on the earth and breathes the vapor that comes from it. Scientists now call it as hallucinogenic gases. And then she speaks in riddles on behalf of the god. And people came from all over the Greece to ask her things. Kings, generals, farmers, everyone. Because in this world, prophecy is not a party trick, it's infrastructure. Basically, you don't make a major decision without consulting the oracle. The oracle is basically your GPS, except it speaks in metaphors and is never wrong, even when it seems wrong. So Laius basically goes and asks about the sun, and the oracle tells him that you'll have a son. He'll kill you and marry your wife. That's it. And then she's done. That's it. No exit interview, no support resources. Just, here's your nightmare. Have a safe journey home. Now, what would you do with that information? There are 3 options after this. Never have children, problem solved. Have a child and trust that everything will be fine one day. Third one is have a kid and murder it before it could murder you. And that is the exact kind of logic that gets you in trouble. In these stories, like, we'll get there. So Jocasta gets pregnant and she gave birth to a baby boy. Laius hands that baby to a shepherd, which is basically his servant only, and told him to take the baby and put it out in the wilderness and leave it there and let it die of exposure. But he's at this current situation where he is one of those anxious people. He also did one thing. I'm reading it out, okay? He pins the baby's ankles together with a metal spike through the flesh so it cannot crawl away. The shepherd took the baby, goes to the Mount Saturn, and here is where the plan immediately starts to fall apart. Because the shepherd, whose name we never learned, this random side character whose name history forgot, looked at this baby with pinned ankles on a mountain all alone and thinks, no, I'm not doing this. He doesn't bring the baby back. He doesn't defy his king. He stayed loyal, but in a way. He just finds a solution. There's another shepherd nearby from the neighboring kingdom Corinth, and our shepherd gives the baby to that shepherd of the another kingdom. This mystery infant with injured ankles and passes him along like a very illegal handoff in a relay race where the baton is a human child. The Corinthian shepherd brings the baby home. And here's the thing about Corinth, that the king and queen, Polybus and Merope, also doesn't have a child. So when this shepherd shows up, they take him in. They raise him as their own. They named him Oedipus, which in Greek means soul and feet, because of the ankle thing. So this child, abandoned, nearly killed, passed on between 2 strangers on a mountain, grows up as a prince, loved and stable by 2 parents, and a kingdom that will one day be his. He doesn't know any of this. As far as he's concerned, he's just a normal kid in Corinth. With Polybus as his dad, Merope as his mom, life is fine. And it will stay fine until a dinner party. So, Oedipus grows in Corinth. Normal life, good parents, he's a prince, everything is fine until a dinner party. So there's a dinner party, someone drunk. People are always drunk in Greek dinner parties, historically accurate. Someone looks at him across the table and said, you know, you're not actually their kid, right? And then continues eating. Now most people would let that go. Drunk guy, ignore it, move on. But that was Oedipus, and he doesn't leave a question unanswered. That's the thing. When he goes back to home, when he came back home, he asked his parents if that is true. They said no. Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. But the way they said it doesn't fit right. Oedipus didn't leave that question aside. So he goes to the oracle at Delphi, just like everyone, walks in, wants to know who his real parents are. Well, Oracle didn't answer that, but straight up told him, "You will kill your father and marry your mother." And then she's done. No context, no follow up, no good luck, just straight up curse and then go. Oedipus leaves, not back to Corinth, far away from Corinth, because in his head he is the child of Polybus and Merope. If he goes home, the prophecy could happen anyhow, and he doesn't want to know how, and he's not waiting to find out that. He doesn't know how, but the only way to protect them is to never go back home, according to him. So he walks away from everyone he loves directly towards Thebes. Part 3, the crossroads. So there's this place called Phocis with a crossroad. Three roads meeting at one point. Oedipus on foot, all alone, carrying whatever you carry when you've just decided to abandon your entire life. And I guess it's not much. Coming the other way, a chariot with important looking man inside, with his attendants around him. The chariot tries to push Oedipus off the road because that's the social contract. You on foot move aside for the man in carriage. Oedipus doesn't move. An attendant hits him with a stick, and something in Oedipus just snaps. The same thing that made him leave Corinth, same thing that made him go to the oracle in Delphi. This refusal to be told move, do not ask, just obey, just accept it. He fights back, kills the attendants, kills the old man in the chariot, and kills most of the others. One person runs, gets away. Now what happened? Oedipus continues towards Thebes. As far as he's concerned, entitled man tried to run him off the road and paid for it. Part 4, the Sphinx. Now Thebes has this problem. There's a Sphinx outside the city, like head of a woman, body of a lion, and has wings. The whole thing. She sits at the gates and asks every traveler, every passerby, a riddle. Gets wrong and she kills you. And the riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the evening? Everyone who has tried is dead. The road to Thebes is lined up with dead bodies. The city is basically sealed. No trade. People are starving. It's completely disaster. Oedipus walks up to her. She gave him the riddle and he answers quickly. Baby crawls on all fours. Adult walks upright. Old age cane. Third leg. A cane as a third leg for old age. The Sphinx destroys herself, throws herself off the cliff, because her power only existed as long as no one could answer that. But Oedipus just did. So it was an endgame for Oedipus. Now walks into Thebes. The city loses its mind with relief. The monster is dead, roads open, saved by the stranger who has came out of nowhere. And the timing, they just lost their king on a road. By whatsoever reason, they don't know it exactly. Thebes has no king, the monster problem has got solved. And there's this man, complete stranger. The city offers him the throne and Jocasta, because you married the queen to become a king. Like, that was just how it worked. And Oedipus said yes. They get married, 4 kids, years pass. Okay, so he's a good king, like genuinely just. City is stable and happy, everything is completely fine. And then this plague hits. This is actually where Sophocles starts his play. He drops you right here, mid disaster, crops failing, cattle dying, the city suffering in that specific way that feels like punishment rather than bad luck. Oedipus sends Creon, his brother-in-law, to the oracle. His oracle is always step one, has always been step one. That's just how you troubleshoot in ancient Greece. Creon comes back. Plague is a divine punishment. Thebes is sheltering. The murderer of King Laius, find the killer, exile him. Plague ends. Oedipus announces this publicly that he'll be driven out. Culrip will be driven out. He will exile him himself, the murderer of King Laius. Let's call it irony. He summons Tiresias, blind prophet, ancient, the kind of figure who's been showing up across Greek myths for generations in a way nobody questions. Not that blind prophet, he's blind, but sees everything which he wishes or sometimes wishes he didn't. Tiresias arrives. Oedipus asks, who's the murderer? Tiresias tries to leave. Literally he says, I know things and I'm not telling you. Let me go. It's better for everyone. Oedipus won't let him and accuses him of being involved in that murder. Tiresias, finally worn down, furious, and just says it. You are the murderer you've been looking for. Oedipus doesn't believe him for a single second. Decided it's a conspiracy against him. Creon wants the throne he's paid off to Ricius. The whole thing is a setup. He's completely certain. So certain that the actual truth doesn't even register. And nearly comes to blow with Creon. Now Jocasta steps in to calm him down and says that these prophecies are not reliable. Even Lais got this one prophecy from Oracle that his child will kill him one day. But what happened? But that didn't happen. They had the baby killed before letting him grow up. And what happened with Laius? Laius died on a crossroad by some stranger. That basically just means okay, the prophecies are not reliable. Nothing happened with prophecy. Jocasta finally said this out loud. Now, crossroads. Oedipus goes very still. It's like a conversation between them. Where was this crossroads? She said, focus. What did Laius look like? Older, tall, graying. Looked a bit like you actually. How many people with him? A small group, one escaped. And Oedipus starts doing the math. Now, this man, feeling the floor shift for the first time in his life. Now, he tells Jocasta about the road incident, the chariot, and the man escaped, and everything about that. He asked for the surviving witness. Needs to see him. Now, while they were waiting, a messenger arrives from Corinth. Polybus is dead. Old age. The kingdom wants Oedipus back. After the grief, relief came because the king died naturally. Polybus died naturally, and that was a big relief. Prophecy was wrong, he's safe. He says this to Jocasta that I worried for nothing, but then I still cannot go back because Merope is still alive, the other half of the prophecy. The messenger who's been listening this goes, is that what you're worried about? Don't worry, she's not your real mother. He was the Corinthian shepherd that took the baby that day on Mount Citharion. Injured ankles, pins through the flesh, brought it to Polybus and Merope. He was there. Oedipus asked, who gave you the baby? And he goes like, a Theban shepherd, one of Laius' man. And Oedipus realizes that shepherd, the surviving witness from the crossroads, the one man who ran, same person, already sent for, like almost here. She knows exactly where this goes. She grabs him. Stop, please. Some things are better not known. Leave it. He doesn't stop. The shepherd arrives. Old, terrified, doesn't want to be there. He has been carrying this for decades now. He knows that opening his mouth would end everything. Did you give this man a baby? She said, please don't. A child from this household, from Lai's household. He said, yes. Where did the child come from? He said, please, I'm begging you. Where? He asked. It was the queen's, Jocasta. Jocasta gave it to me. It was cursed. Said, get rid of it. I couldn't leave it to die, so I gave it away. I thought it would go somewhere far. I thought, whose child? I thought, Oedipus asked, whose child? And the shepherd finally said, Laius. The thing about this place, okay, now Oedipus goes inside and a messenger came back out. The thing about Greek theatre is that they keep the violence off stage. Everything reported second-handedly. Jocasta locked her room and hanged herself with her own robes. Oedipus broke the door down, found her, took the gold pins from her dress and drove them into his own eyes. He comes back out blind, covered in blood, and he says, Apollo did this to me, but the hands that put out these eyes, those were mine. He's not saying that fate made him do it, that he had no choice, that it was all written before he was born. He's saying, yes, the prophecy existed. Apollo knew, but every step I took, I chose. I killed that man at the crossroads because I refused to move. I kept investigating. When Tiresias told me to stop, when Jocasta begged me to stop, when the shepherd was on his knees asking me to stop, I needed the truth more than I needed to be okay. These hands, mine, he exiled himself. He made the decree. Killer of King Laius gets driven out. He made that oath in front of the public and he keeps it. Now he walks out of Thebes, blind, alone, led by his daughter Antigone into nothing. Make of that what you will. See you in the next one. Maybe, probably see you in the next one. Bye.